The neon lights of Kepler Station's lower district flickered through the artificial rain, casting purple and blue shadows on the wet metal walkways. Marcus Reed stood under the shelter of a cargo bay entrance, watching the late shift workers hurry past. His weathered hands gripped a steaming cup of synthetic coffee, the warmth seeping through his fingers as he waited for his ship's fuel. Tanks to fill. 20 years of hauling freight across the outer rim had taught him to read people quickly. Desperate souls moved differently in places like this. They lingered too long in doorways, their eyes scanning for opportunities that decent folks wouldn't consider. That's why he noticed her immediately. She moved through the crowd like liquid shadow, her silver-blue skin catching the station's harsh lights in ways that made her seem almost ethereal. Her long, dark hair was braided with tiny, luminescent threads that pulsed weakly, as if struggling to maintain their glow. The thin fabric wrapped around her body was meant to attract attention, but Marcus could see the exhaustion in her movements. The careful way she avoided the security cameras when she finally approached him. Her chin was raised in defiance, but her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "Human," she said, her accent thick with the musical tones of the distant Andorian colonies. "I need passage off this station. I can pay you in the only way I have left." Marcus studied her face, noting the pride warring with desperation in her violet eyes. She was beautiful, certainly, but more than that, she carried herself like someone who had once known better days. The faint scars on her wrists told a story of recent captivity. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Zara," she replied, surprised by the simple question. "I'm Marcus. And you don't need to pay me that way," he gestured toward his ship. The aging but well-maintained freighter called the Stellar Wanderer. "You need food, rest, and safe passage. That's what you'll get." Zara's eyes widened, suspicion and hope battling across her features. "Nothing is free, human, especially not for my kind." "My kind doesn't abandon people in need," Marcus said, finishing his coffee and crushing the cup. "The galaxy's got enough cruelty without me adding to it." She followed him toward the ship, her bare feet silent on the metal deck plates. As they walked, Marcus kept his pace steady, never looking back, but listening for the soft sound of her footsteps. Trust, he knew, was built in small moments like this. Not demanding, not rushing, just offering space for her to choose. The Stellar Wanderer's cargo bay doors hissed open, revealing a clean, organized space that spoke of a captain who took pride in his vessel. Marcus led her through corridors lined with maintenance panels and storage compartments, past the galley with its small table and 2 chairs, to the ship's modest guest quarters. "Door locks from the inside," he said, standing in the threshold. "Food dispenser works with voice commands. There are clothes in the storage unit that should fit." He paused, meeting her eyes directly. "You're safe here, Zara. Whatever brought you to that station, whatever you're running from, it stops at my airlock." For the first time since he'd met her, Zara's mask slipped. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and she pressed her hand against the doorframe as if she needed the support. "Why?" she whispered. "Because 20 years ago, someone showed me the same kindness when I needed it most," Marcus replied. "The universe has a way of balancing things out, if we let it." As he turned to leave, preparing the ship for departure, he heard her voice, softer now, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tighten. "Marcus... Thank you," he nodded without turning around. "Get some rest. We'll talk more when you're ready." Zara woke to the gentle hum of hyperspace engines, a sound she hadn't heard in months. For a moment, she lay still in the narrow bunk, feeling the subtle vibration of the Stellar Wanderer cutting through the void between stars. The clean sheets smelled like ozone and metal polish, familiar scents that reminded her of better times when she had traveled freely among the worlds. The clothes Marcus had mentioned fit surprisingly well. Soft pants and a tunic in deep blue that complemented her skin tone. When she emerged from the guest quarters, she found him in the galley, preparing what looked like a real meal, rather than the nutrient paste she'd grown accustomed. 2. Protein synthesis takes time, he said, without looking up from the food processor. But it beats the emergency rations I usually live on. Zara settled into one of the chairs, watching him work. His movements were precise and economical, the product of years lived in confined spaces where every gesture mattered. She noticed the small details about him now that survival wasn't her immediate concern. The laugh lines around his eyes, the careful way he arranged the plates, the fact that he'd prepared enough food for both of them without asking if she was hungry. "Where are we heading?" she asked as he set a plate before her. "Frontier Junction. It's a trading post on the edge of neutral space. Lots of ships come and go, easy to disappear if someone's looking for you." He sat across from her, his own meal steaming. "Or to find new opportunities if that's what you're after." Zara took a bite and closed her eyes at the taste of real food. "You assume I'm running." "The scars on your wrists aren't from jewelry," Marcus said gently. "And desperation doesn't usually drive people to make the offer you made unless they've exhausted every other option." She set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "I was property for 6 months. Bought and sold like cargo. The auction block on Kepler Station was supposed to be my final destination." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "My home world was conquered," she continued, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "The survivors were scattered across the galaxy. Some escaped, some were enslaved, some ... double quotes. She shrugged, the gesture carrying years of grief. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and the simple words carried genuine weight. "The war has been over for 2 years. My people are slowly finding each other, rebuilding. But freedom isn't free, and I had no way to pay for passage to the sanctuary worlds." She met his gaze. "Until last night, I thought selling myself was my only option." Marcus reached across the small table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was gentle, non-threatening, but firm enough to convey support. "You never have to make that choice again. Not while you're on my ship." Something shifted in Zara's chest at his words. She studied his face, looking for the deception, the hidden price that always came with male kindness. Instead, she found only sincerity and a warmth that made her want to believe in possibilities she'd thought were lost forever. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Haul freight, 2 forgotten worlds. Help stranded refugees. There has to be easier ways to make a living." Marcus smiled, and the expression transformed his weathered features. "Ever been to Earth, Zara?" She shook her head. "There's an old saying there. The measure of a civilization is how it treats its most vulnerable members. Maybe that applies to individuals too." They finished their meal in comfortable silence, and afterwards Zara helped him clean up despite his protests. As they worked side by side in the small galley, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed dishes, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safety. Not just physical safety, but the deeper kind that came from being seen as a person rather than an object. That night, as the stellar wanderer carried them deeper into space, Zara found herself thinking about the humans sleeping in the captain's quarters down the corridor. Marcus Reed was unlike any man she'd encountered. His strength wasn't about dominance or control. It was about choice, about creating space for others to heal and grow. And for the first time since her world had burned, she began to hope that maybe the universe still held some kindness after all. 3 days into their journey, the stellar wanderer's proximity alarms began blaring. Marcus rushed to the bridge, Zara close behind him as the ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent lurch that sent them both grasping for handholds. "Pirates," Marcus growled, studying the tactical display. 3 sleek raiders had formed an intercept pattern, their weapon systems already charging. They must have been monitoring the hyperspace lanes. Zara slipped into the co-pilot seat, her fingers dancing over familiar controls. "I can reroute power from life support to the engines." "By a speed you know ships?" Marcus asked, surprised at her competence. "I was a navigation officer before the war," she replied, her voice tense with concentration. "My ship was destroyed defending a refugee convoy. The raiders opened fire, plasma bolts lighting up space around them. Marcus threw the stellar wanderer into a spiraling dive. Using the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid field to mask their heat signature, the old freighter groaned under the stress, but held together. There, Zara pointed to a gap between two large asteroids. If we can thread that passage, it leads to a gravitational anomaly. The pirates won't follow us in there. Marcus didn't hesitate. He trusted her judgment completely, a faith that surprised them both. The stellar wanderer plunged into the asteroid field, dodging debris and energy bursts from their pursuers. In the narrow confines of the cockpit, their shoulders touched as they worked together. Each movement coordinated with the other. A plasma bolt clipped their port stabilizer, sending the ship into a wild spin. Zara reached across Marcus to engage emergency thrusters while he fought to regain control. For a moment, she was pressed against him, her face inches from his, both of them breathing hard from adrenaline and exertion. Their eyes met and held. In that instant, surrounded by danger and the cold vacuum of space, something electric passed between them. Not just attraction, but recognition. Two souls who had found something precious in each other. Then the moment passed as Marcus pulled them out of the spin and guided the ship. Through the asteroid gap, the gravitational anomaly beyond created a shimmering barrier that the pirates couldn't cross without risking their ships. They were safe. That was incredible flying, Zara breathed, her hand still resting on his arm. Incredible navigation, Marcus replied, not pulling away from her touch. We make a good team. Later, as they sat in the observation deck watching the strange lights of the anomaly dance across the hull, Zara found herself studying Marcus in profile. The stress of their escape had faded, replaced by something deeper and more complex. "Tell me about your life before freight hauling," she said softly. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I was married once, Alina. She was everything bright and good in the universe. Cancer took her 5 years ago." His voice carried old pain, carefully contained. "After she died, I couldn't stand being around familiar places, familiar faces. So I took to the stars." Zara felt her heart clench at the sadness in his voice. She must have been very special. She was, Marcus agreed. She always said that love wasn't about holding on, but about making room for joy to grow again. He turned to look at Zara. His eyes reflecting the strange lights outside. "I think she would have liked you." The confession hung between them, loaded with possibility. Zara felt tears prick at her eyes. Not from sadness, but from a hope so fragile she was afraid to acknowledge it. "Marcus," she whispered, and then his hands were cupping her face, thumbs brushing away the tears she didn't realize had fallen. "Is this what you want?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Instead of answering with words, she leaned forward and kissed him. Soft at first, tentative, then with growing passion as he responded. His arms came around her, pulling her closer as they fell back against the observation. Deck's cushioned seating, their lovemaking was tender and desperate. Born of loneliness and the recognition of something precious found in the vast emptiness of space. Marcus worshipped her body with gentle hands and reverent kisses, while Zara poured all her gratitude and growing love into each caress. Afterwards, they lay entwined under the strange aurora of the gravitational anomaly, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "What happens when we reach Frontier Junction?" Zara asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since their first kiss. Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then his arms tightened around her. "That depends on what you want to happen." She lifted her head to meet his gaze. "I want to stay with you. But I don't know if that's fair to ask." "Zara," he said, his voice full of certainty, "you're not asking. I'm offering. The Stellar Wanderer has room for 2, if you're willing to share the journey." Her answer was another kiss. Deep and full of promise for all the adventures yet to come, Frontier Junction emerged from the cosmic dust like a metallic flower, its rotating sections bristling with docking ports and communication arrays. The neutral trading post served as a crossroads for dozens of species, a place where refugees, traders, and wanderers could find temporary sanctuary among the stars, as the Stellar Wanderer settled into its assigned berth. Zara stood at the observation port, watching the bustling activity in the docking bay. Ships of every configuration imaginable were being loaded and unloaded by crews that represented the full spectrum of galactic civilization. Second thoughts? Marcus asked, joining her at the viewport. Many, she admitted, leaning against his solid warmth. But not about us. A message indicator chimed on the communication console. Marcus frowned as he read the display. It's for you. Quantum burst transmission from the Andorian sanctuary fleet. Zara's breath caught. She hadn't heard from her people since her capture months ago. With trembling fingers, she activated the message. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the bridge, an elderly Andorian male with kind eyes and silver-threaded hair. Zara, child of stars, the figure said in their native tongue. I am Elder Thane of the Sanctuary Council. Our scouts reported your presence on Kepler Station. We dispatched a rescue ship, but you had already departed. His expression grew concerned. We know you were held in captivity. A medical and psychological team is standing by to help you heal. The message continued with coordinates for a rendezvous point where the Andorian fleet was gathering survivors. Ships would be leaving for their new homeworld within the week. This was her chance to rejoin her people, to be part of rebuilding their civilization among distant stars. When the transmission ended, silence filled the bridge. Marcus stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face carefully neutral. They're your people, he said quietly. They can give you things I can't. A place to belong. Others who understand your loss. Zara studied his profile. Seeing the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders had squared as if bracing for impact. Is that what you think I should do? I think you should do what makes you whole, Marcus replied. Even if that means leaving. She moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. What if staying makes me whole? Hope flickered in his expression before he could hide it. Zara, I won't hold you back from your destiny. You are my destiny, she said fiercely. These past weeks with you have shown me more kindness, more joy, more love than I thought possible after everything I've lost. My people will rebuild their civilization, but I want to build a life. With you? Marcus reached up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Are you sure? The Stellar Wanderer isn't much compared to what they're offering. Home isn't a place, Zara said, covering his hand with hers. It's where you're loved completely for who you are. I found that with you that night. They walked through Frontier Junction's marketplace together, hand in hand among the diverse crowd of spacers and traders. They stopped at a small chapel built into the station's core, where a human chaplain and an Andorian spiritual guide performed bonding ceremonies for couples from different species. The ceremony was simple but profound. They exchanged vows under starlight, visible through the chapel's transparent dome, promising to share whatever joys and sorrows the galaxy might bring. When Marcus slipped a simple platinum band onto Zara's finger, she felt the last walls around her heart crumble completely. Later, in their ship's quarters, they made love with a passion deeper than desire a communion, souls that had found their perfect match among infinite possibilities. Zara traced the contours of Marcus's face in the soft light, memorizing every line and shadow. No regrets? He murmured against her hair. Only one, she whispered back, her voice full of mischief. What's that? I regret that it took a desperate night on Kepler Station to find you. I wish we'd had more time. Marcus pulled back to look at her, his eyes warm with love and promise. We have forever now. Every star in the galaxy, every world we haven't seen yet. All the time we need. Zara smiled and kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude into the connection. Outside their viewport, the lights of Frontier Junction twinkled like earthbound stars, while beyond the station's hull, the real stars beckoned with endless possibilities. She had chosen love over duty, partnership over belonging to a group, and for the first time since her world had died, she felt truly alive. Whatever adventures waited among those distant suns, they would face them together. 6 months after their bonding ceremony, the Stellar Wanderer drifted in the shadow of a massive space station called Haven's Rest. What had started as Marcus and Zara's private refuge had grown into something extraordinary. Floating sanctuary for refugees, outcasts, and those seeking second chances among the stars, Zara stood in the station's main hub, coordinating the arrival of 3 ships carrying families displaced by the latest border conflicts. Her natural gift for languages and navigation had made her invaluable in helping lost souls find their way to safety. But more than that, her story of surviving slavery and finding love had become a beacon of hope for others. The Valerian transport reports engine trouble, called out Finn, a young human engineer who had joined their growing crew. They're running on emergency power with 47 passengers aboard. Dispatch the rescue tugs, Zara replied without hesitation, and prepare Medical Bay 3 for possible casualties. Marcus watched his wife work from the observation deck above, pride swelling in his chest. The scared, desperate woman he'd met on Kepler Station had transformed into a confident leader who inspired others through her compassion and strength. Their love had healed them both, but it had also become something larger, force that touched everyone around them. A gentle hand on his shoulder interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Sarah Kim, their chief medical officer, smiled at his expression. She's remarkable, isn't she? More than I ever dreamed possible, Marcus admitted. Sometimes I wonder what Elena would think of all this. I think she'd be proud, Sarah said quietly. You've honored her memory by opening your heart again. And look what grew from that courage. The rescue operation proceeded smoothly, with the damaged Valerian ship safely brought into Haven's Rest's docking bay. As evening fell by station time, Marcus and Zara retreated to their private quarters in the residential section they'd built for permanent residents. Their rooms overlooked a garden habitat where children from a dozen different species played together while their parents worked to rebuild their lives. Bioluminescent plants from Zara's homeworld grew alongside earth roses and Centaurian singing flowers, creating a symphony of color and sound that represented unity and diversity. Remember when it was just the 2 of us in a cargo hold full of machine parts? Zara asked, settling into Marcus's arms on their small balcony. Simpler times, he agreed, nuzzling her hair. Do you miss it? The quiet life aboard the Stellar Wanderer? Zara was quiet for a moment, watching the children play below. Sometimes. But then I think about all the people we've helped, all the lives we've touched. Our love story didn't end when we found each other, Marcus. It expanded. A soft chime from their communication system interrupted the peaceful moment. The message was from the Andorian Sanctuary Council Elder Thane himself. Looking older but pleased, Zara, daughter of stars, his image said with formal ceremony, word of your sanctuary has reached us across the galaxy. The Council has voted to establish a permanent embassy at Haven's Rest. To support your work in helping refugees find new homes, his expression softened with grandfatherly warmth. We are proud to call you family, wherever among the stars you choose to make your home. When the message ended, Zara felt tears of joy running down her cheeks. She had not been forgotten or abandoned by her people. Instead, they celebrated the path she had chosen. It seems our little trading post is becoming something bigger, Marcus observed, pulling her closer. Good, Zara said firmly. The galaxy needs more places where love matters more than species or origin, where second chances are always possible. That night, as they lay in their bed listening to the gentle hum of the station's life support systems, Marcus traced patterns on Zara's bare back while she pillowed her head on his chest. What are you thinking about? She asked, sensing his contemplative mood. The future, he replied. All the ships that will find us, all the stories that will begin here. I'm thinking about the children who will grow up in our garden and the families who will find each other in our corridors. Zara lifted her head to meet his gaze. And what do you see? Hope, Marcus said simply. I see a place where the best of humanity, all sentient life, really can flourish. I see our love becoming a foundation that others can build on. She kissed him then, deep and sweet, their bodies coming together with the easy passion of long partnership. Their lovemaking was a celebration of survival, of connection, of the miracle that had brought 2 lonely souls together in the vastness of space. Later, as they drifted toward sleep, Zara whispered against Marcus's neck, I love you. Husband of my heart, I love you too. Star of my soul, he replied. The endearment they had created for each other in the early days of their courtship. Outside their quarters, Haven's Rest continued its eternal dance through space, carrying within its hull hundreds of beings who had found refuge, purpose, and hope. At its heart were two people whose love had proven that even in the darkest reaches of the galaxy, compassion could triumph over cruelty, and connection could overcome any distance. The stars wheeled overhead, eternal and patient, witnesses to a love story that had become legend among the traders and travelers of the Outer Rim. And in years to come, when refugees and outcasts heard whispers of a sanctuary where all beings were welcome, they would remember the tale of Zara and Marcus, proof that sometimes the most desperate moments can become the foundation for the most beautiful beginnings.